I have often noticed in one's expeditions how hard it is to explain to one's friends afterwards why such and such a day was particularly delightful, or give them any impression of one's pleasure, and such a trouble besets me now about the past day.
I've been looking at it all week. Okay.
Of course, I felt as if I had left everything behind, yea, as if I myself should be left behind.
Oh no. I think I just ruined my nail varnish. Focus, but sometimes not.
There we were, off for Iceland. A third-class railway journey by night, we started at 9:15, is neither eventful nor pleasant. We droned away as usual in such cases, though I, for my part, was too excited to sleep. So there we were in Scotland. I for the first time. North of the Tweed, the country soon got very rich looking, with fair hills and valleys, plentifully wooded. I thought it very beautiful. We had left the sea now, but every now and then we would pass little valleys leading down to it that had a most wonderfully poetical character about them. Not a bit like one's idea of Scotland, but rather like one's imagination of what the backgrounds to the border ballads ought to be. Well, then we got to Edinburgh, and I will make that Friday, July the 7th, though I should have given the date before. We walked ourselves pretty well off our legs, buying odds and ends. I had my hair cut in terror of the dreaded animal, Faulkner all the while egging on the hairdresser to cut it shorter. I have a sort of feeling that we shall never get away. My flesh crept, for I expected firstly to die of seasickness, secondly to be drowned.
Yeah, I was just trying to see how they did it.
We Englanders are in great spirits, but Mags seems to have lost his in spite of chaff. Nevertheless, we presently sat down to a whist in the cabin, and after a long rubber, up on deck about midnight, a lovely night too, with the light of dawn already farthering in the northeast, and presently the moon rising red above the harbour.
6:15.
Are we doing it? Should we do it in the lanes that we were in before?
21.
31.
I literally...
I felt happy and adventurous, as if all kinds of things were going to happen, and very glad to be going.
7.
slowly steamed out of the harbour towards Iceland, unregarded by any living soul. You get lazy and are quite contented with watching the sea on board ship when all is going well and the weather is warm. On the other board was the Fair Isle now, where Carrie stayed with David before he struck the last strokes in the avenging of Njal.
They got a fine fair wind and were but a short time out. The first land they made was the Fair Isle. It lies between Shetland and the Orkneys. There that man whose name was David the White took Carrie into his house, and he told him all that he had heard for certain about the doings of the Burners. He was one of Carrie's greatest friends, and Carrie stayed with him for the winter.
There seemed to be a great glittering green and white wall on either side of us, and the ship staggering down the trough between them. The sails flapped and swelled, and the sea seemed quite close to the low gunwale amidships. Then I went to the little platform astern, and lay about there watching the waves coming up, as if they were going to swallow us bodily and disappearing so easily under her. It was all very exciting and strange to a Cockney like me. I confess I shuddered at my first sight of a really northern land. Then came a smart-looking boat carrying the governor, and having 8 oars aside, manned by the chorister carles, who, by way of salute as the boat touched our side, shuffled off their Faroish caps in a very undignified manner. These old fellows, like most or all of the men, wore an odd sort of Phrygian cap, stockings or knee breeches loose at the knee, and a coat like a knight's juste au corps, only buttoning in front and generally open. The boats are built high stem and stern, with a keel rib running up into an ornament at each end, and cannot have changed in the least since the times of the sagas. While we went through the streets of Tórshavn, to my very great delight, there was a smell of fish drying certainly, but the place was wonderfully clean. There was no second story in the town, and no house but was tiled with turf, which grew beautifully on some roofs. The houses are all of wood, some white, some black, some done over with Stockholm tar, and all with little sash windows. The streets are all up and down hill, and there is no wheeled carriage in the island. In short, the houses are like the houses in the toy Dutch town of our childhood days, and therefore delightful. There was real beauty about the place, of a kind I can't describe. It looked as if you might live for 100 years before you would ever see ships sailing into the bay there, as if the old life of the saga time had gone, and the modern life never reached the place. There we drank unlimited milk.
No, I wouldn't.
Sorry, I'm just going to take a video.
There, I have seen Iceland. We saw the mainland, a terrible shore indeed. A great mass of dark grey mountains worked into pyramids and shelves, looking as if they had been built and half ruined. At last we see the first of the great glaciers that look as if it were running into the sea, and soon there is nothing but black peaks sticking up out of the glacier sea. This is the sides of the Vatnajökull, an ice tract as big as Yorkshire. The grey peak is Swinefell, under which dwelt Flossie the Burner. A little further west, a jagged ridge marks the whereabouts of Hall of the Side. A most dreary region all this seems, but the pastures of course and whatever might soften it are all hidden from this distance. A most dreary place. Yet it was hereabouts that the first settler came, for on ahead lies now a low shelf of rock between Jökull and the sea, and this is Ingolf's Head, where Ingolf first sat down in the autumn of
870 was the date of Ingolf's landing. He settled down at Reykjavik in 874 EN.
Now we see the Westman Islands a long way ahead. They lie just opposite to Njarl's house at Bergthor's Knoll. As they get nearer we can see them like the broken down walls of castles in the sea. Before I left the bridge, I looked north and saw a crimson spot spreading over the orange in the sky, and that was the dawn. At last, we sighted Reykjavik. And after a pipe and a talk with the skipper, are sent for by Magnusson, who has gone ashore before us, and land accordingly in a queer street of wooden houses that looks like Canada.
This would have been a good place to go.
We went into some shops that overlooked the harbour and bought some useful things: cheese,
An ice
cherry
cream
brandy,
bag.
knitted guernseys and gloves. I am heartily sick of Reykjavik, and as we are to camp out the first night, it seems rather rash to set out in pouring rain, to bed again.
Praise of lords will always live, unless people perish or worlds collapse.